Join me as we watch this beautiful story from beginning to end. But before we continue, I kindly ask you to press the like button, then click the part written subscribe. Now write your comment about this story and tell us where you are watching from, which country or region. In a peaceful village, there lived a family with a long history of sorrow and hardship. Subira's father, Mzee Rashid, was a well-known man in the village, respected for his wisdom and loving heart. He was known for helping his neighbours, offering guidance to the youth, and often taking part in gatherings of the village elders. He was greatly honoured, and his name was associated with integrity. When Mzee Rashid married his first wife, they were blessed with only one child, Subira. Sadly, his wife died while Subira was still very young. This forced Mzee Rashid to remarry so that he could have help raising his daughter. That was when Mrs. Zawadi entered the family. At first, she appeared to be a kind and caring mother, but as time went by, her true character began to reveal itself. Mrs. Zawadi was blessed with two daughters, Asha and Nima, who were loved excessively by their mother. A great difference could be seen in the way they were raised. Asha and Nima were favoured in everything: beautiful clothes, good food, and their mother's affection. Subira, on the other hand, was treated as a burden. She was isolated, given the hardest household chores, and often humiliated. Subira became known in the village as a gentle girl with a compassionate heart. Although she was mistreated at home, the villagers loved her because of the respect and help she showed to others. She was often seen helping elders carry water or assisting small children across rivers. Her smile was unique, reflecting the strength within her heart and the patience of her spirit. While Asha and Nima attended village celebrations dressed in jewels and perfume, Subira was often left at home doing chores. But on the rare occasions when she appeared in the village, people were amazed by her natural beauty, a beauty that needed no decoration. The elders called her the Daughter of Light, believing that she carried special blessings within her. After the death of Mzee Rashid, his house changed completely. Although the mud walls remained the same and the roof was still worn out, the air inside was no longer filled with love and unity. Instead, it was filled with the voices of Mrs. Zawadi's two daughters, Asha and Nima, laughing with mockery and often insulting Subira. Mrs. Zawadi was a woman of striking appearance, with sharp eyes and a smile that could deceive anyone who did not know her deeply. To the villagers, she often presented herself as a respectable and wise mother. She loved appearing at village celebrations dressed in elegant kitenge cloth, looking like a symbol of status. But inside her home, her true nature emerged: cruelty, greed, and jealousy towards Subira. She had a great dream: to see her daughters married to wealthy and high-status men. She often spoke proudly, saying, "Asha and Nima are my treasures. I will make sure they marry rich and honourable men, so that my name will be heard throughout the village and even beyond its borders." For Subira, there were no words of love. Mrs. Zawadi treated her as a burden, assigning her difficult tasks and making her appear low and worthless. Asha, Mrs. Zawadi's first daughter, had an attitude of superiority. She loved dressing up and showing herself off before the young men of the village. She often walked with pride, displaying her new clothes and boasting loudly. "Look at my clothes! Mother bought them for me from the market. No girl in this village can compare to me," she would say repeatedly. Nima, on the other hand, followed in her sister's footsteps. Although she sometimes seemed a little gentler, she quickly learned mockery and pride from her mother and sister. Together, they treated Subira like a servant, giving her insulting names and forcing her to do the tasks they considered dirty. Subira would wake up at dawn, even before the rooster crowed. She swept the house, washed dishes, cooked food, and often carried water from the river. While Asha and Nima slept peacefully, Subira struggled under heavy responsibilities. Many times, Mrs. Zawadi looked at her with contempt and said, "You are nothing, Subira. Do not deceive yourself into thinking you can ever reach the status of my daughters. Your work is to serve in this house and obey my commands." These words hurt Subira deeply, but she never responded with anger. She knew that answering harshly would only bring her more suffering. Instead, she learned to endure and live with patience, and her name became a true reflection of her life. The villagers noticed this difference. Although Mrs. Zawadi presented herself as a respectable mother, they secretly knew that Subira was suffering. They often saw her carrying heavy firewood or large containers of water, while Mrs. Zawadi's daughters laughed and wandered freely in the streets. The village elders felt pity, but they did not dare interfere directly in the family. One day, as Subira had gone into the forest to cut firewood, as she always did, she was deep among the trees, striking wood with her machete, when she suddenly heard the sound of a horse approaching. The ground shook slightly, and the sound of hooves echoed powerfully. When she looked up, her eyes met those of a young man dressed in fine clothing, with captivating eyes and a smile full of respect. That man was none other than the Prince Jabari. For a moment, Subira felt her heart race. She had never met someone of royal blood face to face before. She lowered her eyes respectfully, feeling both shy and afraid. Jabari looked at her for a long moment, astonished by her natural beauty. He saw the sweat of hard work upon her, yet her face still shone with a unique grace. "Greetings, sister. Why are you doing such hard work all alone?" Jabari asked gently. Subira humbly replied, "It is my duty. My mother sends me here every day. I have no choice but to obey." Their conversation was filled with friendliness and respect. As time passed, Jabari found his heart being drawn to Subira. He saw her gentleness, her wisdom, and her natural beauty. From that day on, Jabari began visiting Subira in the forest at the same time she went to cut firewood. Each time they met, they spoke about life, dreams, and hopes. "Subira," Jabari said one day, "your heart is different from most people I know. I would like to know you more, not because of your status, but because of who you are." Subira felt tears rolling slowly down her cheeks. "No one has ever spoken to me like that. At home, I am only a servant, but your words have given me strength." As the days passed, their friendship began to blossom into something greater. Jabari felt his heart being pulled towards Subira, and Subira, though afraid of her stepmother, felt true happiness for the first time in her life. Jabari made his decision clear. He wanted to marry Subira. To Jabari, it felt as if he had found a rare treasure. He knew that his parents, especially the king, expected him to marry a princess or a girl of high rank. But his heart had already decided. Subira was his true bride. "I will fight for this love," he told himself firmly. "Even if the whole world stands against it, my heart has chosen Subira." News of the friendship between Subira and Jabari began to spread quietly through the village. Although they tried to meet secretly in the forest, people's eyes did not fail to notice. Young herders had seen Jabari speaking to Subira several times with respect and gentleness. Soon, whispers spread. "The prince seems to be drawn to Subira." When Mrs. Zawadi heard this rumor, her heart filled with anger and jealousy. She saw her dreams breaking apart. She desperately wanted Jabari to marry Asha or Nima, not Subira. That night, she sat alone, making plans, her eyes shining with greed. "This Subira must be stopped. Her beauty could ruin my dreams. I will never allow the late husband's daughter to take the place of my own daughters. My child will marry the prince, not that orphan," she said with bitterness. Mrs. Zawadi first began by preventing Subira from leaving the house to cut firewood. She gave her even heavier tasks, carrying water 3 times a day, washing endless piles of clothes, and sometimes sending her far outside the village so that she would return late. She knew that by doing this, Subira would have no chance to meet Jabari. But Jabari, determined in heart, continued searching for Subira. He knew that the stepmother was plotting tricks, but he refused to let his love be extinguished. Mrs. Zawadi also began spreading lies about Subira throughout the village. She said proudly, "Subira is not a respectable girl. She has very bad behavior and has many men in this village. The prince should choose a bride of high class, like Asha or Nima." The villagers were shocked. Most of them knew Subira's true character: gentle, respectful, and compassionate. Though they respected Mrs. Zawadi outwardly, they felt her words were not true. Still, Mrs. Zawadi did not stop there. She began making secret plans to ruin Subira. She told Asha and Nima, "My daughters, this is your opportunity. The prince must see your beauty, not hers. I will make sure Subira looks low and worthless." Asha and Nima laughed with pride. They wore beautiful clothes, covered themselves in perfume, and often appeared at village events, trying to attract Jabari's attention. But Jabari was not deceived. He had already seen the true worth within Subira. As for Subira, her suffering only increased. She knew her stepmother was plotting against her, but she never complained. Instead, she told herself quietly, "Perhaps this is just another trial of life, but my heart has chosen love. Even if the world opposes me, I will remain patient." A few days later, the village of Mbayuni was filled with excitement and anticipation. News spread that the king had announced a great village celebration, a ceremony that the prince, Jabari, would attend officially and declare which young woman he would choose as his bride. For a long time, the village had never witnessed such a grand event. Women busied themselves sewing new dresses and preparing their beauty products so they could look their best. Men arranged drums and traditional music, while the youth prepared cultural dances and games. It was a moment of great honour, and every family wanted to display its pride. Mrs. Zawadi saw this celebration as her last chance to make her dreams come true. She knew Jabari loved Subira, but she refused to accept it. She planned with all her strength to make sure that either Asha or Nima would win the prince's attention. "My daughters," she said sternly, "this is your moment. Make sure you look more beautiful than any other girl in the village. Subira will not be allowed to appear. She will remain at home, working." Asha and Nima laughed with pride, already seeing themselves as winners. They dressed in luxurious clothes, covered themselves in expensive perfume, and prepared to stand before the prince. For Subira, however, the situation was painful. She loved village celebrations, but her stepmother forbade her from attending. Instead, she was given heavy tasks: sweeping the house, cooking, and making sure everything at home was in order. "You have no status to take part in this celebration," Mrs. Zawadi told her contemptuously. "Even if Jabari sees you, I will make sure he can never choose you." Subira felt tears slipping down her cheeks, but she said nothing. She knew her stepmother's schemes were powerful, but deep in her heart, a secret hope still remained. On the night of the celebration, while Subira was working in exhaustion, she heard a soft knock on the door. When she opened it, she found herself face to face with Mzee Hamisi, an old friend of her late father. "Subira," he said gently, "I have seen your suffering for a long time. Your father was my friend, and he left something valuable for you. Today is the day of your destiny. Do not allow yourself to remain hidden." Mzee Hamisi handed her a beautiful royal garment that had been kept safe for many years. It was unique, shining with noble colours, and it looked like a treasured family heirloom. "Wear this dress, Subira. Today you must appear." The beauty of your heart and the grace of your natural face will shine before the village and before the prince. Subira felt her heart fill with joy and gratitude. She wore the garment, and for the first time in her life, she felt like a girl of dignity and worth. When the celebration began, the entire village gathered together. Drums were played, songs were sung, and joy filled the air. Asha and Nima appeared proudly, believing themselves superior. Mrs. Zawadi smiled arrogantly, convinced that her dream was about to come true. But suddenly, Subira appeared. Her garment shone with rare beauty, and her smile reflected respect and gentleness. The villagers stared in amazement and whispered in wonder, "Is that Subira? Her beauty is extraordinary. She is like the light of the great baobab tree in our village." When Jabari saw Subira, his heart filled with joy. Without any doubt, he knew Subira was his true bride. As Asha and Nima stood before the crowd in luxurious clothes and fine perfume, people admired them only for a moment. That the instant Subira appeared, wearing the treasured garment given to her by Mzee Hamisi, all attention shifted to her. Her smile was full of dignity and gentleness, and her eyes shone with inner light. Mrs. Zawadi felt anger rising within her. She knew her dreams were collapsing. She stared at Subira with hatred, knowing Jabari would be drawn to her. Jabari stepped forward before the entire gathering and lifted his hands respectfully. The whole place fell silent, everyone waiting for his words. "My people," Jabari began with a firm voice, "today is the day of my destiny. I have met many young women. I have seen beauty and status. But my heart has chosen only one. A girl with a pure heart and a spirit of love. My bride is Subira." The entire gathering erupted in astonishment. People cheered, clapped, and sang songs of joy. The elders smiled and said wisely, "This is true justice. The beauty of the heart cannot be hidden." Mrs. Zawadi tried to protest. She stood in anger and cried out, "No! Subira is not worthy of such a place. She is only a servant. The prince should choose a royal bride, not a girl of suffering." But the king himself rose and looked at Mrs. Zawadi with sharp eyes. "A person's worth is not measured by clothes or wealth," he said with authority. "It is measured by the heart. And Subira's heart has shown true royal value." Mrs. Zawadi fell silent, overwhelmed by shame and anger. Her daughters, Asha and Nima, were filled with jealousy, tears streaming down their faces in pain. The villagers cheered loudly. They felt as if Subira's dream had finally come true. The girl who had once been despised and treated as worthless had now become the prince's chosen bride. Subira felt tears of joy running down her cheeks. She thanked God with a humble heart, saying softly, "My destiny has changed. My suffering has become the beginning of my happiness." After Jabari's public declaration before the entire village, everyone's life changed. The celebration became a historic memory, but inside Mrs. Zawadi's family, a fire of emotions had begun to burn. Joy, jealousy, and fear all mixed together. Subira felt as if her dream had become real. For the first time in her life, she felt true respect and genuine love. Tears of happiness flowed down her face as she realized that her many years of suffering had not been in vain. That night, she sat quietly in her room, looking at the garment she had worn to the celebration. She whispered softly, "Father, I know you can see me. My destiny has changed. My suffering has become the beginning of my happiness. True love has found me." Inside her heart, Subira felt a new strength. She knew her journey had not been easy, but now she had someone to stand beside her, Jabari. For Asha and Nima, however, Jabari's declaration was like a heavy blow. They felt shame and anger. They had dressed themselves in expensive perfume and fine clothes, believing themselves superior, yet Jabari's eyes had been fixed only on Subira. Asha cried bitterly and shouted in anger, "Why, Subira? She is only a servant. I am the one who deserves to be the prince's bride. I am far more beautiful than she is." Nima, though once slightly gentler, also felt deep jealousy. Hatred towards Subira filled her heart, and she said with contempt, "Her beauty is only luck. We will make sure she does not go far." This jealousy began to grow into great hatred inside the two sisters. They felt as if their dreams had been shattered, and they were ready to join their mother in planning new schemes. Mrs. Zawadi felt deep pain in her heart. She realized the decision had already been made, and her dreams of seeing her daughters marry the prince had completely faded. She tried to remain strong on the outside, but inside she was deeply wounded. That night she sat alone in the darkness, thinking with sorrow and regret. Asha and Nima watched her in silence, understanding that the path they had dreamed of was never meant for them. For the first time, Mrs. Zawadi felt the full weight of rejection, and she remained with the pain of seeing that her daughters had not been chosen by the prince.